Have you ever imagined what a vigilante would be like in our world in the most realistic way possible? A cold, calculating guy, and literally, not ironically, me. All of this as someone seemingly ordinary with an apparently friendly smile, but who, in the shadows, works to dispose of trash. He could also be Batman. I am Batman. The only difference is that this one doesn't wear a mask and doesn't send criminals to the police. He prefers to finish the job right there, almost the same. A guy who has been active for decades, his peak has 8 seasons, and he simply refuses to be caught. We are already in the 4th series made in his name. The man continues on Prime. Figured out who I'm talking about? Of course you did. It's in the title of the video, so get your tranquilizer shots ready because today on this channel, Dexter, all the seasons in one video. All the series, what other channel does that? I'm crazier than all of you, literally, the butcher from Recife.
Dexter.
Our pilot episode kicks off with pure action. The first person we see is Dexter Morgan, ready for another one of his dirty jobs. As for this episode's victim, it's that old guy over there. He seems just like another normal guy acting normally among people, for sure. But not for our Dexter. He has the gift of sniffing out criminals. Well, Dexter takes the guy to an old cabin, where we learn a bit more about his methods. He doesn't simply eliminate people just like that. He wants them to know what they've done. Before that,
Abra seus olhos e olha o que você fez!
Levei muito tempo para limpar esses meninos.
and now that the old man is aware of what he did and why he deserves this, it's time for Dexter to move on to step 2. There, after using his famous tranquilizer injection, he ties the victim up with tape, packages him, and places him on a table. Another important step of this ritual is to make a small cut on the cheek, just to collect a drop of blood and store it in a jar.
Meu pedacinho do mundo será lugar muito mais limpo e feliz.
Well, the scene cuts, and now we are on the next day. Just like the old man, Dexter is also seen as a nice and calm guy living around there. As for the blood in the jar, look, it's beautiful to end up in a box full of various other vials. That's the reason he makes the cuts. The stored blood is a kind of trophy for him. Besides that, you can see that he is no beginner. He has several vials there. Later on, the next thing we discover about our protagonist is that he works in forensics, more specifically as a blood analyst. In other words, he can go in and out of crime scenes and stay informed about police cases. Another character we meet is Debbie, that beautiful lady who will be part of a good portion of the episodes from now on. And if she looks familiar to you, it's because she is part of the popular Girls in White Chicks.
Eu não posso nem usar uma mini saia com top sem parecer uma porca gorda.
So what we need to know about her here? In short, she's still just an ordinary cop, never done well in long-term relationships, even trying really hard. I mean, seriously, jokes aside. For now, she's the only living person who truly loves Dexter.
Tô na patrulha, a Lagueta me mandou pro quarto pra eu ficar fora de vista.
Now, the reason she's dressed like this is that the police are investigating the serial murders of young women in the neighborhood. She's undercover there. Well, since we're on the topic of blood, Dexter now heads to a crime scene where we meet a few more important and striking figures from the plot. The first is the data analyst, Makuka.
Eu vi sua irmã. Ela tá gostosa.
And we need to know more about him. Basically, he's one of the best comic reliefs you'll find. He's also a clueless baldy, a pervert, and a ladies' man. It just so happens that this is a specific scene where Dexter, it shouldn't be, especially since this was a completely bloodless crime. The body out there was totally drained, and that leaves Dexter astonished, apparently with a hard-on because...
Por que eu não pensei nisso? Sem sangue. Que ideia maravilhosa.
By the way, this other rising figure on the scene is Detective Angel, or for the more intimate, La Paseo. His wife doesn't mind, as long as I come home with the passion. That's what keeps the relationship alive, the passion. Another important figure around here. He's another one who doesn't do well in relationships, generally speaking. He's a character who will be more developed over the seasons. The important thing for now is that, without blood, without work, Dexter is leaving, and already at the precinct in his natural habitat, we can't forget to mention him.
Surprise, motherfucker!
The guy who knows something but can't prove it, Sergeant Douglas. Our suspicious big black
Morgan.
Policial Morgan.
Another bald guy in the plot. There were few actors with hair at the time, and the main thing to know, for now, is that he is one of the only ones who always found Dexter a bit sinister, even with Dexter pretending to be nice. One of the biggest nuisances to our anti-hero, and for me, one of the best characters in those early seasons.
Policial Morgan.
Continuing with his routine, Dexter is going going to meet the perfect woman for him, Rita, the great ideal woman. This is because she isn't much of a fan of having sex. She has traumas from the past involving this.
E ela é perfeita porque a Rita é tão perturbada quanto eu.
Damn, that phrase is extremely iconic, literally very me. The butcher from Recife has no way around it. So they started dating a few months ago, and he even took on the 2 kids of this single mother. Without losing the train of thought, now it's early morning, and Dexter is researching his next victim. Clark. But after all, why does he only go after bad people? To explain this, let's go back a few decades in time. Dexter was adopted by that old guy there while he was still a child, and apparently from the very beginning, he had a thirst for blood.
Tem sangue na sua faca.
At that stage, he was only going after animals, and knowing that over time this thirst would worsen, to solve this, his adoptive father, Harry, created a code of honor. He taught Dexter to channel his murderous instincts towards people who deserve it, in addition to, of course, covering his tracks. His father was a good cop.
Você é meu filho. Você não está sozinho e você é amado.
In short, he has been following this code from an early age and uses it to this day. In fact, the next victim is going to be that fat guy there. Yet another weirdo who did bizarre things. Anyway, there's nothing left for him.
Eu também não me arrependo.
Back to the streets. Remember the guy who drains the blood from his victims? Dexter finds out that he does this using an ice truck. Coincidentally, he finds that ice truck. He follows him, but the guy manages to get away, leaving a head behind. What's left is to call the police, where we meet another of the canonical characters, Lieutenant Lagerta. I'll save the explanation for later, since this is a pilot episode and her personality will change in the following season.
Ela é boa, tenente. Devia lhe dar uma chance.
E você devia me chamar de Maria. Eu vou te dizer quem é bom. Você é.
In the end, Dexter receives a direct message from the killer. A good time to mention that even though there are several victims throughout the episodes, we will have only one main villain per season.
Eu devia ficar chateado. De fato, acho que esse é um recado amigável, do tipo, e aí, quer brincar?
Current villain, the Ice Truck Killer. Yes, that's the name given to him by the series itself. In fact, the summary of this episode was longer to introduce the characters, but let's speed things up from here. In the next episode, boom, Debbie finds the abandoned ice truck on the streets. There, where 5 fingers were frozen in a giant block, something they take for analysis, but for now, no very relevant clue. They still haven't gotten the fingerprint, and since it was Debbie who found the truck, and she's a good cop, here's a promotion for her. Now Dexter's little sister is moving from patrol to homicide. Well, with the next victim, the guy from the ice truck was a bit bolder. He dumped a body in the middle of a rock stadium.
Posicionando a vítima no meio de um estádio de 20 mil pessoas para que toda Miami veja.
Corpo sem a ponta dos dedos.
Those very fingers that were found in the previous episode. Since the woman's body was identified, the police have a new target, that guy. Debbie and Dexter know it's not him, but for Dexter, it's great that a killer is out there so he can go after him himself. He's a vigilante, no doubt about it. As the police were after the wrong killer, the real one got irritated and decided to break the mold this time, leaving that severed hand on the beach, this time with blood and eliminating the old suspects of the police. However, just by analyzing the cuts and the blood, Dexter discovered that the owner of that hand was being kept alive. In other words, yet another provocation from the murderer directly to Dexter. Even having warned the police, he decides to investigate alone at night. Thus, he finds the guy there, tied up and amputated, and what the truck killer wanted was for Dexter to finish off the victim right there, which of course he doesn't do because the guy doesn't fit the code. The police come and rescue the still living victim. As for his relationship with Rita, it keeps evolving, even though neither of them is very fond of the situation. The guy has no feelings, but he has desire. Dexter is going to have sexual relationships throughout the series, and spoiler alert, sometimes not even with Rita. But stay tuned, there's more to come. Well, outside the main mission, Dexter starts investigating a kind of modern day gang, a couple who were trafficking and exploiting immigrants. He even finds the warehouse where they kept the people.
Estava torcendo para ter farol Stingray 69 em algum lugar por aqui.
And in the midst of one of the couple's crimes, Dexter takes care of the two tied up, turning them into keepsakes side by side. How cute. The big problem is that the next day, none other than the body of the woman he eliminated the night before returns to the junkyard. In other words, this is going to be an episode focused on Dexter having to investigate the scene of his own crime. The plot is really good. It even made my live stream crash one day because of boobs. In summary, this scene was another provocation from the truck guy to see how he would react.
Ele não está bravo, ele está me testando.
Secondary plot, Rita's ex-addict, who used to beat her, got out of prison and is back to being a pain.
Tá comendo minha mulher, é?
And on the other hand, remember the amputee who was rescued? He's still in the hospital, the place where Deb went to see if he knew anything about the killer, and where a vibe is also developing between her and the doctor responsible for making the prosthetics. By the end of the night, they didn't waste any time and already went out on a date. Personal note, this guy has been strangely suspicious from the start and is quite an enigmatic character. I didn't even need to comment on the next plot as it doesn't part of the main storyline, but it's worth mentioning that for me, this is one of the best episodes of the season, an episode where Dexter investigates a killer psychologist and, to do so, attends therapy sessions with him. The dialogues in this episode are very good.
Parece que muitas coisas estão fora do seu controle. Não é à toa que se livrou das suas emoções. Assim não tem que se sentir impotente.
Evolution and Deb's relationship, now she and the doctor are already sleeping together. Evolution in Dexter's relationship thanks to therapy, as he has finally managed to get Rita into bed for the first time. Thank you, psychologist, you brought out the best in our protagonist. And goodbye, psychologist. We will remember you as a character who could have been further explored. And remember how the prosthetics doctor seemed suspicious? Clearly he did. The guy revealed himself to be the very truck killer. And he's manipulating poor Debbie. Moreover, of course, it was him who sent all the signals to Dexter. In other words, the maniac has some fixation and wants to get closer to him for some reason we still don't know. I already know, but I won't tell you because I want to increase the retention of my video. He seems to be more interested in Dexter than in Debbie, and in fact, it's not just a facade. In the next episode, a bit more about Dexter's past. He enters a room with a lot of blood and starts having flashbacks from when he was still a child, even if he doesn't quite remember what happened. As for Rita's ex, who came back to be a pain, who would have thought he continues to be a pain? And since Dexter can't get rid of him, according to the code, he resolves the issue in another way. In short, the ex was an addict, so Dexter took care of the guy, and he was arrested again after being caught red-handed with drugs. He framed the guy. Problem solved. Anyway, Dexter continues to have occasional memories from his childhood, so he starts investigating on his own and discovers that when he was just 3 years old, he witnessed a massacre in a container. He saw his mother and a few others being dismembered with a chainsaw. Moreover, Dexter was trapped in there, drenched in blood for days. For those wondering if he was born this way, here's the answer. He became this way because of his past. The revelations keep coming, thanks to the angel. This is also the episode where our protagonist finally uncovers who Debbie's boyfriend really is.
No almoço, Rudy me disse que tinha cortado o lábio de manhã. Estava muito distraído para me preocupar, mas agora ele tem toda a minha atenção.
And speaking of Deb, it's too late for her. The doctor managed to lure the woman onto a yacht, and tonight is the night.
Meu Deus, me solta!
This is the moment when Dexter, known for feeling nothing, began to feel true terror.
Central, aqui é Dexter Morgan. Preciso que localizem a policial Deborah Morgan pelo rádio.
Unlike the police, who don't know where to go, Dexter heads to where it all began, the container where he was found by Harry shortly before being adopted. But the important thing about this scene is that we are blessed with the memes.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Alright, we found the scene. By the way, I do these live streams on Twitch at LeoClark69, and I post everything on the secondary channel. I highly recommend checking both links in the description. But the bald guy never stopped following Dexter, who knows he's somehow linked to the ice truck killer, but can't prove it. After that, both are called back to the precinct, where everyone is still investigating. As for Dexter, who is autistic, he prepares to follow the second clue, the house where he grew up until the incident in the container. Once there, he starts to remember a little more of his childhood. The color of the nails, the room with blood, all the signs throughout the season were deliberately left for Dexter. If only he remembered the big plot twist. The doctor and truck killer, Brian Moser, was actually his brother this whole time. Moreover, Brian was also in the cursed container. That's the reason he became a killer now. Just like Dexter, the big difference is that Brian was already 5 years old when he was found, while Dexter was a clueless child. Brian was already broken. In other words, he was sent to a psychiatric facility and never learned a code like his brother. After their chat, the two finally go to meet Debbie. She's out cold on a table, prepared in the same way that Dexter does with his victims. Brian wants them to cut her together and rid themselves of this code of honor once.
Sem motivo ou arrependimento.
In the end, just before Debbie wakes up, Dexter decides not to go through with it. The two end up fighting, the police arrive, and Brian manages to escape. Even though Dew finds it very suspicious that Dexter arrived before the whole police force, Debbie saw part of the fight and will defend her brother.
pode largar do pé do meu irmão. Ele acabou de salvar minha vida.
Of course, Brian still has unfinished business. In the early morning, he goes back to Dexter's house, where he intended to eliminate Debbie. However, all of this was a plan by Dexter himself to capture him. Brian's fate is to be taken down at his own table, where he drained the blood of his victims. A difficult decision, but necessary. Goodbye, Brian. The series has 8 seasons, but many still consider you one of the best villains. Your body was found by the police, who deduced that this was a scene where you took your own life. Some parallel details before the end of the season. Doc has a lot of free time and is now following Dexter 24 hours a day. I love Doc being like a shadow behind Dexter. He even creates telepathy.
Por que ele faria isso? Pra me encurralar na toca do coelho. O que disse, Morgan?
Rita, she's starting to suspect that it was Dexter who got her ex arrested. As for Debbie, even though she's mentally messed up, she continues to work normally to forget what happened with Brian. Well, in the new season, it's been 38 days since Dexter took the knife to his brother. Since then, he still hasn't had the opportunity to go after other criminals, especially since Doc is still on his tail.
Preciso mesmo. Matar alguém.
Davey, on the other hand, even while pretending, is still quite shaken from being involved with a serial killer. She has become more aggressive and can't trust anyone. As for the first victim this time, it's going to be that huge mountain over there, Tino, a guy over 2 meters tall who has done a lot of bad things and whom Dexter was able to erase. However, our protagonist hasn't practiced in a long time, so it's Rusty, meaning the giant fleas from the slaughterhouse. Dexter with a hell of a curiosity. According to the actor himself, this particular slaughter is one of his favorites throughout the series. End of the hell of a curiosity. Anyway, Vigilante can't do any more justice. Dex broken after what he did to Brian. Still, he manages to capture Tino again and ends up coming back after all.
Olha isso firme como cirurgião.
In any case, no time for an existential crisis, especially since the big killer of the season is much worse than the previous one, perhaps the worst of all.
Todos. O grande...
Yes, Dexter's own crimes are being revealed, and he himself will be the new villain. Davis is basically a season focused on the character's evolution, a season in which the Butcher is hunted. Because Butcher is the name given to the author of these crimes. Who is the Butcher of Bay Harbor? More than 13 bodies have been found in the sea, and the count continues. There's even a new badass old detective involved in the case, Lundy. The oldest one is the most fun in the series.
Mas com a ajuda de vocês e os erros que essa pessoa cometeu e irá cometer, vamos descobrir quem fez essa coisa horrorosa.
And remember the suspicions that Rita had? Well, now her ex lost his life while he was in jail, and since she felt guilty, she played detective and found out that Dexter was the reason he got arrested again. Just the same thing Dexter admits. There's no way, though, he manages to get rid of that guilt by saying he did it because he's a junkie too. He just didn't say what the addiction was.
Dexter, você é viciado.
Sim, eu tenho vício.
In short, because of Rita, the serial killer is now going to have to go to a rehab clinic just to not lose the single mother. I am Dexter, and I'm not sure what I am. A place where he ends up meeting the naughtiest of all the naughty. Layla Leela, the woman who speaks in a sultry tone, looks with a sultry gaze and might be naked at any moment. The editor's greatest enemy.
Qual é o seu nome?
Ela já olha com vontade.
Viciado.
Damn, this one likes to show her boobs. We're going to nickname her Mrs. Boobs. This crazy hot one, damn her. Some updates on the Butcher case. Dexter used rocks to sink the body in the ocean. Rocks that contained specific algae in them, which, when analyzed, can reveal where the boat came from. The net is tightening, and one thing worse than the FBI is that Dexter also knows his mother-in-law, the old lady who right off the bat realizes he is hiding something and will become a pain in the ass during the season, even though I won't mention her anymore here because she is annoying and not very relevant, and the video is mine. As for Debbie, she's not as traumatized anymore, as by this point she's strutting her stuff for a guy from the gym. Now that's what I call overcoming. Spoiler, Debbie has a new affair every season. Many nickname the character the Round of Bay Harbor. There's no other way. As for the mischievous Lila, she's still getting to know and getting closer to Dexter. He even shows her the room where the bodies are found, and contrary to what he thought, she finds it intriguing and not terrifying.
Mas a pessoa que fez isso...
É exatamente igual a mim.
Dexter is crazy for someone who truly knows him. Updates on his past. Harry and his biological mother had an affair. The mother was a police informant for Harry specifically, and consequently, this led her to the container. Updates on Docs. The caterpillar caught his attention for stalking Dexter. She thinks something is wrong and that he's out of control. Debbie is also having a new approach. Slowly, starting to like the detective who is old enough to be her father. The guy is disheveled. The absence of a father is tough. As for another discovery by Dexter, it was the location of one of his mother's killers. So he embarks on a trip there, along with the crazy little minx Layla, and even falls asleep in her arms. Dex is odd, but this hot, crazy girl seems to be even weirder.
Calma. Tá tudo bem.
Besides that, they discovered where the algae were coming from, and it was exactly where Dex's boat is, forcing him to go there and clean everything up. Hiding crimes for a decade or two was easy, but when betrayal occurred, it didn't last long at all. That's because Rita ends up hearing the voicemail left by Layla. She found out about their trip and broke up with him.
Poderia ter falado sobre a nossa viagem? Aí sim ia ser problema. Deixa que eu quero ouvir.
Puta que
Imagina a cara da Rita sabendo que passamos a noite juntos em hotel. É traidor e eu cansei disso.
How did Dexter manage to resolve this situation? He went there to have a delicious confrontation with Layla. Now the two of them really did that. What step was that? In other words, Dexter is getting serious with the crazy mistress. Now, finally, outside of Dexter's carnal relationships, he practices a lot of sex. This season is the butcher of sex, there's no other way. On the other hand, Doc never stopped investigating. By this point, Dexter is so fed up that he doesn't even bother to deny being a villain who is really hiding something from the suspicious black guy. All out and gives us this wonderful scene here.
Sempre estarei passo à frente por uma simples razão.
Eita porra!
Qual seria?
Eu tô no controle.
Puta que o pariu!
Quero sua arma, distintivo e identificação policial. Quero seu cartão de acesso também. Agora!
Maluco.
Now, dude, it's time. Our favorite bald guy is out of the police force. Although that definitely won't stop him from continuing the investigation. It's in that dude's soul already. And remember Debbie's approach with the elderly man? Who would have thought? The two of them have already started kissing. Let's keep track. That's her. Fourth relationship in the series. Anyway, that old guy isn't just there to hang out with young women. He has already advanced in the butcher's investigations enough to know that the serial killer is someone from the department, an imposter, an infiltrator. The police force returning to the protagonist in his meetings with Layla reminds us of the trip they took after the guy who corrupted Dexter's mother. He went there to confront the murderer, but in the end, he left him alive. Now the guy is back, attacked Dexter, and ultimately could have taken the chance, but now it will be in the past. Nothing more fitting than this job being done with a chainsaw. Of course, in the midst of all this, look at Dukes attacking again. Now that he's no longer working for the police, free from the warrants, he decided to invade Dexter's house and ended up finding his trophy boxes, which he ends up taking with him. In the end, everything is very exciting, but we're back to the soap opera Layla versus Rita. This is because someone broke into Rita's house. Dexter left the guy's body on the table and everything else to go there. And in the end, he discovered that it was Layla herself who, after all, is extremely jealous, possessive, and naughty. What can you do?
Uma coisa é mexer comigo. Outra é mexer com a minha ex-namorada que me odeia.
All of this, combined with other jealousy fits that the naughty one had been having throughout the season, ended up making Dexter open his eyes for good. He told her to stay away and ended everything. In the next episode, after spending the day being followed by the FBI, Dexter returns to his apartment to hide evidence. However, there, he does not find his precious little trophy box. The only conclusion for this is that, well, it's over for him. Nothing else matters. He's been discovered.
Holândia achou minhas lâminas.
Dexter Morgan? O agente Land quer vê-lo.
This is where, in one of the best scenes of the entire series, Dexter is called to the precinct, where all his friends are waiting with his damn box. Reaction. Reaction. I want to see a reaction.
Oh. Oof.
Explain to us, our trophy is what I thought. What happens now is that I know it will be a huge surprise for you, Morgan, but our main suspect is someone you know well. Sergeant James Doug. Doug is also a trained killer by the forces. This is racism, dude. Just because the guy is black, man, this is racism. Who would have thought? Dex didn't inform the police where he found the evidence, and now he's going to be incriminated in place of Dexter. It's the suspicious butcher, Big Butt. No way. After this, Dexter is escorted back home and now has 15 guards at the door. Remembering that he left a dead body behind without cleaning up first. That is, it's time to run and go to the location. Disposing of the body is a task that keeps Dexter busy even at night. However, on the last trip, bam, the sweet one appears as if nothing happened. That's right, you son of a... It's over. The bald guy is in shock, tries to take Morgan down, but of course, he still manages to lose to him in a fight. The new situation is that Doc is stuck there being held by Dexter, especially since he doesn't fit into the code and can't go free. What will become of our big-butted black guy? We shall see. Even with all this emotion, Dex still manages to return to his apartment before dawn. And look at Rita going to the guy's house to say she's gonna give him another chance. The woman was betrayed, and still, the one who's chasing after him is a blonde angel with 2 kids. Since she seems to have some time to spare, it's time for our protagonist to explore a bit more of his past. Asking one of his father's former colleagues, Dexter discovers that the old man didn't have a heart attack for nothing. Harry himself caused it as he couldn't take it anymore. I guess it was tough watching Dexter kill someone every week while Debbie brought home a new boyfriend every week. The old man couldn't handle it. By the end of the day, Dexter captures another target and takes him to the same cabin where Duke is being held. Now that the big guy knows the truth, our monster doesn't need to hide anymore. Just imagine how it would be to see someone doing this in real life, right next to you. Pure gore, sinister. Of course, any normal person would be pretty shaken up by it, and it was no different for Dexter's father. He saw what his son had become 3 days before he passed away.
Que foi? Você tá bem? Sai de perto. Por favor, fique longe de mim.
In other words, Dexter was occupied by Harry for what he did. Well, after discovering Dexter's new approach with Rita, of course Layla wouldn't hold back. This time, the crazy lady went too far. She slept with the angel, got high, and is ready to accuse the guy of abuse, ruining his career if Dexter doesn't come back to her. Why can't you leave me alone? Because I'm your true soulmate? Who would have thought that this depraved woman believes in soulmates? The hard truth is that every depraved person believes in it. Of course, Dexter denies it, and there's no way around it. Andre is taken from the police station for questioning. All this situation messing with Angel, combined with what he found out about his father, along with Douglas, who is being unjustly accused, ends up making Dexter quite contemplative. In the end, he himself is thinking about turning himself in and stopping the impact on the people around him.
Eu tô pensando em me entregar.
Even though I still need a day to say goodbye to everything. At night, the guy even organizes a dinner with his brother, as he intended to find a way to say, "It's me, the butcher," which ultimately doesn't happen, but at least the two have a moment to spend together. What nobody expected is that, at a certain moment, the crazy Layla would also invade Dexter's car, find out about the cabin, and meet Docs. The bald guy reveals that Dexter is the true butcher,
Como
and since she clearly
claramente
has
ela
a
tem
few screws
parafusos
loose,
a menos,
that
essa
woman
mulher é
is
bem
really
maluca
crazy. She
mesmo,
decides
deseja
she's
que
going
vai
to blow
explodir
everything
tudo
up to
para
help the
ajudar o
protagonist.
protagonista.
Son of a bitch. With that, yes, F in the comments. Goodbye, sweets. I will especially remember him for his suspicious face, while my Twitch chat will always remember him for having the biggest ass in the series. We will always remember him for having the biggest ass in the Dexterverse. It doesn't take long for the police investigations to also lead him to the damn cabin where Dexter arrives. All they find are just ashes. Besides that, there were tools and the body of one of the victims. In other words, the blame for everything fell on Docs. That talk about Dexter turning himself in.
Não acredito que pensei mesmo em me entregar.
Those scenes with everything he did in the intro were really good, including the latest updates about Rita's. Now the two are definitely back together. They've become a couple again. What a beautiful ideal couple. Damn! Latest updates on Angel. Everyone is too busy with Deuce's case. They withdrew Layla's complaints about him. Latest updates on Debbie. She's going to have to dump her 4th older boyfriend because he's going on a work trip, and according to them, long-distance relationships don't work. Finally, we still have Layla, the woman who discovered Dexter's affair with Rita, kidnapped the couple's children, and even tried to set them all on fire.
Fiquem aí na cama, não se mexam.
This woman loves to burn houses. Those who watched know. After that, she even moved countries to try to start over. But of course, Dexter wouldn't let that slide. Everything she's done so far has been to go after the woman. The rest you can imagine. Goodbye, Layla. Mrs. Boobs. We'll always remember you for being a crazy minx. Anyway, that's the end of season 2. Well, here comes season 3 of Dexter. It ended up being one of the weakest and most forgettable of the series. It wasn't bad, but rather forgettable. Therefore, to prove my point, I will detail significantly fewer episodes than usual, all while not leaving out anything important. Here, Dexter continues his routine definitely as a family man, taking care of the kids, giving some attention to his wife, and in his free time, he still hunts criminals. A few more irrelevant details during this season. This bald guy is Detective Quinn. He's new and will become part of the main cast. As for Debbie, she will have short hair this season, even though I prefer it long, and she will change her haircut again, exclusively because of that. Of course, she looks younger. I don't want to look younger. In addition, she also meets this musician slash informant, who will consequently become her 5th relationship. If he looks familiar to you, it's because you saw Green Arrow, and this time it will work out. Deb, we are all against you. The important thing is that in this season, we have the most gay relationship in the entire series. Dexter and Miguel Prado, the great sucker, they meet at a crime scene that Dexter himself caused, and it was there that he accidentally took the life of Miguel's brother. Miguel, who is a prominent prosecutor, indicates that his brother bled to death almost immediately. Anyway, Dexter ends up saying that he got involved in the case because he sympathized with Miguel's family, and from that point on, they start meeting over and over again, becoming best friends. Now, before we continue with the main story, let's pause for the honorable mission to one of the episodes that became very famous among Dexter fans. The episode where he goes after a man known for photographing little children. Can you guess the reason? My sharp senses detect another predator sniffing closely at one of my little ones. Ah, no one messes with Dexter's kids. That one became a memory right in that episode. Another plot that will unfold throughout the season is that Rita is pregnant, and since she started doing that, she hasn't stopped. The sex butcher is on, and now he definitely needs to take this relationship seriously. That's why I know I want to marry you. Please, say yes. Yes, let's marry you. Then they will plan this wedding, moving into a relationship that has certainly evolved 10 times faster than Rita's. We go back to Miguel. By this point, he already knows about Dexter's dirty work. And he says this, "I'm with you. I'm behind you." That's not a good idea, right? Miguel spends most of the episodes wanting to suck on Dexter. No, you have to go now. Go. Then you suck. My pink version is also a character I didn't mention much, but she was very important to Dexter. The document aunt is battling cancer and will soon come to say goodbye to the series. Even though I'm not going to develop this plot here, they stretched it more than necessary. Anyway, goodbye, document aunt. Dex himself takes her life at her own request because she was suffering a lot. What couldn't be missing in this season, of course, was a main villain. This villain that Debbie discovered to be a tree cutter. A forgettable guy for sure, but at the same time quite gruesome. He has a habit of skinning his victims while they are still alive. Mr. Kim, we met at the crime scene of the second victim, right? On the other hand, the friendship with Miguel wasn't going to stop at just friendship. Now he wants to become more intimate and choose Dexter's victims. He wants to scheme with lawyer Jacqueline, who indirectly exonerates criminals, and Miguel is a very important district attorney. The problem for him is that the protagonist denies this request, especially since technically, she never eliminated anyone. It's not in the code, and Miguel wants to act more personally than out of justice. Sorry, no, so screw it. Miguel still doesn't know that Dexter prefers criminals on the loose so that he can do the dirty work himself. Anyway, first couple fight, and someone is going to sleep on the couch tonight to make amends with Mr. Moocher. Later in this same episode, Dexter promises to teach Miguel all the steps on how to eliminate someone who truly deserves it, instead of just buying the equipment up to the act. However, all of this was, of course, part of Miguel's manipulative plan for him to go there and finish off the poor lawyer himself. The guy is out of control. Changing the subject, remember that Debbie's 5th relationship was with an informant? He ended up in the hands of our pruner and lost some strips of skin on his back, more or less. He was found by Debbie. Even though the villain escaped for now, it's me. It's okay. You're safe. You found me. You won't get rid of me that easily. Now, in the penultimate episode, things with Miguel have progressed so much that the guy is breaking into Lagerta's house. She knows too much and she would be his next victim. And since he's been and still is a danger to innocent people, now Miguel has crossed all boundaries and fits on Harry's list. He's fallen into the protagonist's hands, a guy who, despite being Dexter's best friend for a few episodes, ended up on the table and became the ritual. Like everyone else, it's his end. Goodbye, Miguel. Personally, I will always remember you as a great sucker. To wrap up this season once and for all, it's time for things to get resolved. What was Dexter's way of getting rid of his friend's body? By tearing off his skin parts and putting this kill on the account of the main villain, the Trinity Killer. The Trinity Killer, in turn, has already rivaled with Dexter before, and now that he is being sought after, he has nothing left to lose. He captured Dexter a day before the wedding, but before following how this capture will end, let's go back to Debbie, who has now been promoted to detective. Congratulations, Detective Morgan. And on top of that, she abandoned all her cases for now to rush to the the musician, the first to finish the season, still in a relationship with her. Quite an achievement. Now, back to Dexter. He wakes up tied to this table, about to become the statistic of the trimmer, something that didn't concern our hero much, especially since this villain is just an amateur compared to him. But still, he is going to be a father and husband, wanting to be alive for the first time, meaning he'll find a way to free himself and eliminate that guy. That point...
Esse ponto. O meu também.
My point too is that the guy was thrown out and labeled as a crazy suicidal. Case closed. Finally, enough distractions. It's time for the man to get married. He called everyone he knew, put on a nice suit, and dressed Rita in a beautiful gown. Apparently, that's all a man needs to be happy. Dexter...
Eu juro ser o melhor de todos os maridos e o melhor pai que eu puder ser. É muito lindo.
Transitioning from water to wine. It's time to introduce the one who, for the vast majority of the audience, has become the best season among all the seasons in the series. If before Dexter was already a well-adjusted family man with a perfect life, now that he has a new child and has become a father of 3, the man can't handle the exhaustion anymore. It's so badass that the opening shows an exhausted Dexter. Make a note, 2 kids is the limit, and Dexter, who is a machine and has had a double life for decades, couldn't take it. Just imagine you there, you dirty bastard. Anyway, thanks to the exhaustion, he ended up swapping the roles in a case, and that was enough to free the convicted. This will be your next victim in a subplot that I could easily ignore, but I'll mention it because, come on, it's a great subplot. A little update on the characters. Angel, Lapician, and Lagerta are secretly hooking up. They're finally going to resolve that weird sexual tension Lagerta always had when seeing Dexter, and this couple, man, is really annoying to me. But anyway, moving on to the main mission, we have this crime scene. From the bathtub, a bathtub where a body covered in blood was previously found, and by his doing, the most memorable villain of this series. I'll introduce him to you shortly, later on. Stick around, the retention on this video is going to be good. This is a guy who has been committing crimes for decades and has never been caught, and this case ended up bringing back Detective Land, the 4th boyfriend. Tadafalato, the elderly man who had a thing with Debbie a few seasons back, returned exclusively because of the new serial killer. Debbie can screw off day and night. After all this mess, it's time for Dexter to put Harrison, his son, to bed. He even reveals this. Want to know a secret? Daddy kills people. And I couldn't let that scene pass because it reminds me a lot of the scene from... Oh, that's it. Daddy got a little update on Queen. That new character. Now he's getting involved with this hot reporter, another one who loves to show her tits in the series. It sucks the absence of paternal love, but it's lacking. The two will meet several times and grow closer from here on out. All of this in a grand plot that nobody cares about, including me. For now, you just need to know that she's hot. One of the most delightful so far and is very meddlesome, suspiciously and exclusively meddlesome in the case of Trinity. Anyway, let's try to keep ignoring those two. The next day, it's time for the elderly detective to tell us a bit more about the main villain's methods. His antagonist's name is Trinity. That's because he always takes victims in 3s, but specifically for the last 30 years, following the same pattern. Yes, this drawer passion fruit is presented to us as the most successful villain in history. After work, we'll continue our subplot. Dexter goes after the guy he let slip earlier, prepares the whole ritual in an old ring, but look at the hero's state. Even so, he still needs to speed things up. Harrison has a sore throat and Dexter has to go to the pharmacy, so he finishes the job as fast as he can, tosses everything into the car, and in the middle of the trip, boom. Thanks to this accident, now Dexter will be taken by ambulance and the police will arrive to check the car. This means he is going to be arrested. They found evidence and the series is over, at least for now, right? Since for some reason they didn't find anything. The next day, already at the hospital, Dexter tells Rita that the accident was nothing serious, just a little bump, and even though the doctor wants him admitted, he finds a way to get out of there as quickly as possible. I bet doesn't remember anything from last night and thought the body was in the car. Since it wasn't, he will retrace his steps. It's a don't drink, don't marry. This is don't drink, don't commit murder. On the other hand, his little sister Deborah feels like the main character and goes to visit the elderly man. She says, "Oh, you're retired and have nothing to do here. You must have come to see me, and I'm already dating." And the detective, with 1,000 ideas in his mind, says, "Actually, I'm investigating a murder much more important than all your plots combined."
Eu sou uma idiota.
Deborah.
Soon the applications for the 6th boyfriend will be open. Make your entries. Back to the main point. The subplot ends after Dexter searches for the body all day long. He returns to the abandoned ring, discovers that last night he hung everything from the ceiling, and finally gets rid of the evidence. Our favorite villain will live for another day. While all this is going on, of course. Oh, the Great Trinity wouldn't waste time. He went after a mother of a family, and she will be his second of 3 victims.
Me empurra!
Não funciona assim. Pula.
Remembering that it's strangely important for him that the woman decides to jump of her own accord, even though the old man threatened to hurt her family if she didn't jump. If you want, I'll go to your house and shove an ice pick in your husband's head. I bring your children and throw one at a time until you decide to jump. Anyway, the series will still explain better motivations to us the next day, while the police investigate this crime scene. Detective Quarto also explains to Dexter who the next victim will be. This time, it will be a man who will be killed by hammer blows. Let's not miss the step-by-step of the villain. A young girl in a bathtub, a family mother who does the opposite of living, and lastly, a man getting beaten and talking. No crown, that's scandalous. Look at him getting Debbie again. The woman is crazy for a serious relationship, but whenever it works out with someone, she leaves for the older guy. There's nothing left for the gym guy, nor for the black guy. It's a pity. There's no way. Anyway, the joy of these two didn't last long, especially since right there, in the middle of the conversation, goodbye elderly Detective Quarto. We will always remember him for being very ugly, dying to serve as character evolution for Deb, and of course, as a detective side character. But enough of the nonsense.
Vamos consertar isso juntos.
Of course, the one responsible for this attack was none other than Trinity himself, apparently, who discovered the involvement of the former detective. However, since Debbie got involved getting shot, the villain finally caught Dexter's attention, who will start investigating at the hospital. By the way, Debbie finds her 5th boyfriend and admits to having slept with the older man, meaning goodbye 5th and welcome 6th. Sorry to hurt you.
Shut up, bitch.
As for Dexter, still with his first relationship, he is not in the best situation either. Rita again knows he is hiding something, but can't prove it. He has been lying about where he was, being an absent father, and it is harder than ever for the hero to juggle family and murders. Still, Dexter continues his investigations after the main villain. He's going to stop at that building where the crime is already underway, executing a guy with a hammer. With that, he ends up discovering in one day who the killer is. Someone who hasn't been caught by the police in several decades. The old man shot straight to the top of Harry's list, even managing to escape by car and eventually arriving at that house.
Aí. Ou seja,
in other words, it's puzzling for the guy to have a family if the plan was to eliminate Trinity. That's off the table for now. Dexter wants to get close to him and figure out how a guy who has never been caught can, at the same time, have a happy family, something our protagonist is struggling with. Dex is going to be somewhat of a baby of Trinity now, like Miguel was with him last season. Then Dexter starts observing from a distance and discovers that the old man's real name is Arthur and that he works in construction as a front for killing. And moreover, over, later Dexter even manages to get close enough that they start a friendship. Of course, with Dexter using a false name, only if you fully commit at a certain moment. Dexter also knows Arthur's family. He has a wife, 2 kids, and although they seem happy to the outside observer, you can also see some cracks. The killer. Oh, I see. Got it, Dad. If you understood, you wouldn't need reminding. There are 2 ways to do it. Why not choose the right one? Well, they are there because they plan to go out together. If Miguel were still among us, it would be an ugly fight for the lead role. Miguel seemed to suckle better. It's worth mentioning that amidst all this journey of self-discovery, Dexter continues to embrace his own family. And finally, the neighbor is now wanting to get with Rita.
Muito charmosa.
Very charming, lusting after the butcher's wife. Getting back to the point, it's time to learn even more about Trinity's motivations. He takes Dexter to the house where he grew up, and in the bathroom, he also ends up confessing. It was there where he, at just 10 years old, ended up showing up and scaring his sister while she was in the bath. She slipped, got cut, and ended up losing her life. And there you have the explanation for the victims that Arthur makes in the bathtub. Just like Dexter, he is a guy who was born into blood. That's what turned him into who he is. The trailer also says that his parents took care of everything from the beginning. His mother was the most affected and at one point decided to take her own life. There's the explanation for his second victims. After that, the boy was condemned to stay with his father. He was beaten almost all the time until Arthur himself got tired and used the hammer to put an end to everything. With this, we can already have a good sense of the whole Trinity ritual that has been happening for decades. Anyway, Arthur only told all of this because of Dexter. He said he has also taken someone's life by accident and gained the sympathy of Trinity. That old man is quite odd. Changing the subject, it's really impressive how this old guy can convincingly play both the family man, nice guy persona, and the frightening side. They cast a hell of an actor for this role. Fun fact, he won an award for it. End of fun fact. By this time, Debbie has been back at work for a long time. Since she is also a detective, she is investigating who shot her and the detective. The main suspect was that Trinity himself went there. However, after some investigations, they found out that, in fact, the shooter was someone younger. And remember that Arthur had some cracks with his family? Well, our protagonist has now fully inserted himself into the old man's house to protect the children in case he has an outburst, and it doesn't take long for that to happen. The son has always been through a lot. The daughter is treated like a child, besides being locked in her own room. And as for the mother, despite always smiling, she clearly fears Arthur a great deal. Arthur's daughter even tries to give herself to Morgan because she wants to get out of this very uncomfortable house. Oh, pause to mention the progress of the neighbor who sleeps with married women with Rita. Dexter is always out of the house. And as always, Mel's fiance attracted bees. They had their first kiss. The guy pulled Rita, who didn't want it much, but it happened. The butcher took the cannon. On the other hand, the situation in the Arthur family is worse than ever. The son got tired of everything and started breaking things, including the vase with his old man's sister's ashes. The thing that drives him completely mad, and there's no way around it, he would have killed the boy if Dexter hadn't revealed himself.
Eu devia ter te matado quando tive a chance.
Anyway, the trauma in the family is so great that even after everything, they still decided to defend Arthur, forcing Dexter to flee from there. Now there's no way out. He knows he has a dangerous enemy. Of course, even so, it wasn't enough to make Arthur toe the line. On the contrary, at night he went out, hunting, and this time his target is an innocent boy. Yes, a child. Dexter is also there trying to stop it, but in the end, the old man manages to escape again. Delving deeper, we find out that the Trinity actually never had just 3 victims, always 4. After all, an innocent boy represents the villain in childhood and initiates the cycles of Arthur's murders, so he remembers that the child is currently being kept in that bizarre room. So all of this while he's treated as if he were Arthur himself. He acts in a very, very strange way and even says that he won't take the child's innocence away.
You're a good boy, Arthur, so innocent and generous. Promise you'll always be like this.
Before we move move on, here's a huge revelation out of nowhere. Remember the reporter I was trying to ignore? Who would have thought she's Arthur's secret daughter? Just like me, he ignores her, and she lacks a lot of paternal affection. And remember, Deb suspected a shooter smaller than Trinity? It was the reporter girl who fired the shots. It turns out she had to discover on her own that her father was a killer. That's why she became a reporter and is so interested in the case. And even after discovering this, she decided she was going to protect her father by doing those shots. Anyway, Arthur went over to see what she wanted, but he doesn't want to know much about this amateur.
I followed Land and I saw you meet with him. He started to gather his things and he wasn't going to stop. Then I shot him.
And you? He hides his hatred by telling her to leave and continues with his dirty work. Well, Dexter spent the whole episode trying to figure out where Arthur would take the boy, and here we are. Trinity's plan is to bury the boy's body in concrete so that he remains preserved in that state forever. Man, woman, child, teenager. This Trinity has wiped the victim list clean. Anyway, the two of them get into a fight and the boy is saved, even though Arthur escapes for the 100th time. It's tough for Dex to catch this old man. As for Arthur's lost daughter, she was discovered once and for all and will see the sun rise in a square. Or at least that's what we thought, since after talking about traumas with Debbie, she kills herself in front of Debbie, giving her yet another trauma. One could say that this character died from a lack of paternal love. A small mention, it's worth remembering that as a child, this reporter saw her father in the bathtub killing a woman. But anyway, farewell to the reporter without paternal love, who also enjoyed showing off. A little update on Dexter's relationship. He and Rita finally talked. She admitted to having kissed the neighbor, but Dexter doesn't really care that much. The guy acts in an extremely random way.
Ele me beijou, mais ou menos.
But in the end, the neighbor gets punched. Rita even likes it. Well, the couple is back on good terms. The thing is, Arthur wasn't going to let Dexter disrupt his precious ritual, and that was that. This time, the hunter became the hunted, and the old maniac discovered where the station is where the protagonist works. He walks in as if nothing's wrong and finds Dex in this highly iconic scene.
Como vai? Dexter Morgan.
Something that Arthur did. Just to show that he could catch Dexter at any moment, the old man leaves again, now knowing he could also be in danger. It's time for Dexter to get rid of his family. He sends the affiliates to Disney along with the grandparents, while his son and Rita are going out and waiting to meet him at night. That's the assurance Dexter needed to finally pursue Trinity. By this point, the apartment has already been discovered by the police. They came by earlier and took everything of value. He is fleeing the city, much to the old man's dismay. Just when he thought he had gotten away with everything, his car mysteriously stops working. A plot devised by Dexter himself, who manages to erase Arthur quite easily. In the end, Trinity's story will conclude like every significant killer up to this point, wrapped in plastic. Dexter says he started wanting to be like him, and in the end, he ended up preferring to be better. Arthur was a man of appearances who traumatized an entire family and was ready to abandon them. On the other hand, Dexter is that lovable monster we all know, the cutest serial killer of them all. Anyway, it's over now.
Enfim.
Agora acabou.
Goodbye, Arthur Trinity, old bastard, who will cause problems even after he's dead. We will always remember him for playing his role as a villain so well. Clark, how can he cause problems after all the dirty work? All our protagonist wants is to return home to his ideal woman. Incredibly beautiful, that Rita, and forget a little about this dark past he's always had. However, upon arriving, Dexter was about to encounter a scene that would change his life forever. Remember that Rita was supposed to wait for Dexter far from home at this point? Well, she missed her flight and ended up having to come back. Holy shit.
Born in blood, both of us.
Nós dois.
I thought I could change what I am, keep my family safe. But no matter what I do, it's fate.
This was so brutal, man. It's sad, dude. This one hurts my soul. Goodbye, Rita. You were the perfect woman, the golden wife, the female figure that could only exist in fiction. For that alone, we will always remember you. This is the scene that wraps up our 4th season. Harrison, in fact, was drenched in Rita's blood in a brutal scene. Anyway, a lot has happened. Up to this point, many ignored subplots. But what is done is done. Following the last scene, the first reaction was to take her son outside and call the police. For those wondering the exact number of Dexter's victims up to this point, know that it has never been revealed, at least until now.
I've seen 67 people die, and in the final moment, I looked into their eyes.
As for the police's deduction, this is just another crime scene of Trinity himself, meaning it's a case that is now in the hands of the FBI. Even though Dexter is also a possible suspect, he acted in a very strange way. In fact, he didn't even cry. The neighbor, the married woman's lover, cried, and he didn't. Anyway, after all the agents leave, Deb goes back there with Quinn to clean everything up. She doesn't want Dexter to see the blood of his wife again when he enters the place. Obviously, let's pause to mention that they also get caught up in the cleaning process. Now he's X. Welcome Quinn to 6th place in Deb's relationships. Getting to what matters, Dexter's new situation is much worse than any FBI investigation. He's going to have to explain to Rita's children that, well, Rita is no longer here.
A man entered our home. Their mother was there, and he killed her.
Good luck explaining all this while wearing Mickey Mouse ears. And Rita's parents were very confused by Dex for not saying that Rita died on the day. Dex simply said, "Enjoy Disney there, because I have something to tell you later." With all of this happening and pressure coming from all sides, Dexter comes to the incredible conclusion: everyone will be better off without me. The man's plan is to disappear. Before he leaves, in a symbolic scene, he stops by Rita's wake and is finally honest with her, revealing that he is a killer.
I've never really been honest with you. I'm a serial killer. That's what I am.
Even if it's too late for that now. After that, Dexter grabs his boat, his things, and ends up on that lost island. There, somewhere in the world, he was already under a lot of accumulated stress and, luckily, finds the perfect victim to vent his frustration.
Mas a puta da sua esposa morta pode chupar meu
Anyway, that was the motivation he needed to reclaim his rightful place. New updates on how this season is going to work. Debbie is now living in Queen's house. The woman was quick, even though she doesn't want to get into a relationship with him either. The truth is that Debbie, all this time, just didn't want to pay rent, I think, and in order to move on with his life, Dexter needs his own kind of therapy. He is already breaking into houses and investigating his next target for slaughter, a weird taxidermist. Of course, he wouldn't reach his full potential still being a family man. That is to say, at some point, Astor and Cody decided to stay with their grandparents for good. Basically, they blame Dexter for their mother's death. Anyway, he's still going to be taking care of baby Harrison. Dexter is about to return, continuing the investigations. With the taxidermist, we discovered that the guy was kidnapping and storing women's bodies in barrels of formaldehyde. In the end, he becomes just another statistic at Dexter's hands, and it happens in his own home. A small detail is that in that same house, there was also a woman who was supposed to be the next one into formaldehyde. A woman who saw everything Dexter did, and now it's his responsibility to decide what to do with her.
No, it's fine. No, stop kicking me. Calm down.
Well, his first reaction was to sedate the woman with one of his injections. She was scared, and while she was sleeping, he looked her up. Her name is Lumen. Of course, Dexter also had to convince the woman that he's not a bad guy before letting her go, because he could end up getting arrested. To do that, he took Lumen to the lake, where the taxidermist disposed of the bodies of his victims.
Can you understand? I saved her life.
Anyway, that's how the two ended up developing a certain friends with benefits relationship. One of them even reveals that she was raped, not just by this guy, but by an entire organization of other men who kidnap women, and she intends to seek revenge. It doesn't take long, and that's exactly what she does. The woman alone storms the guy's place, shoots one of them, and since she didn't know what to do being an amateur, she calls Dexter for help. The man then goes to finish the job he got involved in out of nowhere. Finally, after all of this, Dexter decides to play the vigilante hero and even takes down a member of that organization himself. Then, during a dinner, one of them recounts what she remembers about the other men. Dexter finds and pursues one of them in the middle of the night and boom, causes an accident, knocking several other women into barrels with formaldehyde. In other words, this organization is now also a police case, and it's at the precinct. Finally, we get to know the true villain of this season.
Jordan Chase.
His name is Jordan Chase, a millionaire motivational speaker who coincidentally also leads an entire organization of guys who kidnap and assault women. Everyone involved works for him, basically knowing this. The initial plan is to go after Jordan's head of security. Dexter manages to take out Lumi, and the couple kind of eliminates the henchmen together.
Tick-tock, tick-tock. That's the sound of your life running out.
Now they are also more than friends, and the next target is Jordan himself. The problem is that all these couple eliminations have led the villain to discover everything. Then he breaks into Lumi's house while she is distracted and kidnaps her. What the villains of this series love the most is chasing women who hang out with Dexter. Knowing this, and now in his apartment, Dexter prepares before going to rescue the only woman who accepts him. How cute he is, if only we weren't talking about a killer. What can you do? He's the cutest serial killer in fiction. I personally really like this serial killer, but before leaving, Aster and Cody show up with the whole family. As if nothing had happened, they decided to forgive Dexter and chose the best moment for that, and even asked to spend the holidays with him. Who doesn't dream of taking care of 3 kids during the holidays? Well, Dexter is a dreamer, so he agrees. On the other hand, we see things from Jordan's perspective. He has aluminum in the trunk and arrives at this abandoned campsite. Only God knows how Dexter's going to find this guy. Since he didn't know where to start the search, Dexter went to work, but earlier, he asked them to analyze a document from Jordan, and by luck, discovered the exact location of the campsite. The show's writer is so generous. Why bring aluminum specifically to this campsite? You might be wondering. It was the first place she was taken before everything happened. I tell you, me and Hal were more worried than most of the time. Dexter shows up there as discreetly as possible. He gets up now that he's a hostage. Dexter was tied up, and it's clear the villain would be turned away from him, babbling nonsense. Then, our protagonist uses a knife he hid in the holes to strike Jordan, and in the end, manages to take him out. Now that the villain has been tied up, our new couple is ready for the final kill. Nothing fairer than the student doing this. Of course, the problem is that in a rather inconvenient way, Debbie, who it's worth mentioning, is a character that when not thinking about romance is quite smart, hasn't really done anything of much relevance the entire season. She also finds the camp. By now, the police already knew what Jordan's organization had done with the women, and was also aware of the existence of a vigilante couple, eliminating one by one, including she decided to go alone, and as she entered the place, she ended up catching Dexter and Lumen red-handed. Don't move at all. At least they are protected by that tarp. Besides that, Debbie also knows that Lumen was a victim of Jordan. She empathizes with the woman because she has seen recordings of what happened, and thanks to that, she'll let the two escape before the police arrive. Good has triumphed. Last updates before the season finale. Lumen no longer feels so much anger or the urge to kill now that Jordan is gone. She knows that Dexter will continue doing this because of his dark passenger, and for that reason, she has decided to leave forever. She arrived, took Rita's place, and left. That's what remains. My God, there's nothing left. After that, all the police officers and friends go to Dexter's son Harrison's first birthday, probably the most protected baby in the world, right there among the agents. As for couples, Lagertha and Ragnar are still together. Nobody cares, but they are still together. This time, even Machuca ended up with a good silicone girl. As for the Japanese, it's about Debbie and Queen. They are still in some sort of relationship or whatever that was between the two of them. It's nice that they stayed together for a whole season. Get it? They make it seem so easy to connect with another human being. Well, this time, everyone found their mate. Everyone except our great and main hero. Hashtag missing you, Rita. Anyway, at least there are still 3 kids left for Dexter to take care of as a single dad during the holidays. And speaking of 3 kids, there are 3 seasons left until the end. On to the next. And if you haven't given a thumbs up on this video yet, come on, I would fit you in Harry's code. This is really hard work, and a thumbs up plus a comment costs nothing. Anyway, let's continue with the new story. It has been a year since the last events. Right off the bat, we see the Dexter everyone wants to see. The Dexter with fewer responsibilities, focused on the killings he was born to do.
E outras vezes tudo acontece perfeitamente.
Nevertheless, the man still has a lone son to raise. So when the day breaks, the new task is to find a school for Harrison. Thus, he and Debbie go to this Catholic daycare on the angel's recommendation, and it is here that Dexter will face two more ethical dilemmas. First, he is a man without religion who doesn't believe in anything, and he isn't too fond of the place, which doesn't matter too much to him. But this leads to the second dilemma. What does he want Harrison to believe? How will he prevent the boy from having a dark passenger? These are some questions to be answered this season. It will be a more religious affair. To be honest, I thought a lot about what I don't want to pass on to Harrison, which is my dark passenger, but I thought very little about what I do want to pass on. On the other hand, certain things never change. Now Angel and Lagerta decide to break up again. It may not seem like it because I skipped most of their plots, but anyone who watched with me live knows that their relationship is one of the most irrelevant and screw it of the entire series. Even so, they insist on making them take up screen time. Anyway, here's my rant. Now we move on to something more important. Who said that Dexter doesn't have a sex life now that he's a single dad? Look at him getting cozy with the blonde at a class reunion.
Opa, isso aí.
Oops, there it is. Stop talking, Dexter. And remember that Deb and Quinn were in a complicated relationship last season? Well, they're still seeing each other without anything defined. However, Quinn is thinking about proposing to the girl. Thought interrupted as a guy shows up there shooting like it's nothing, talking a bit more about the main plot and taking advantage of these religious issues. Here are the two new villains of this season. The two extremist religious zealots who believe they are messengers of the apocalypse and will go around eliminating people in an apocalyptic manner. The duo seemingly works with the elderly man, who is the boss, and the young man is the one who does the dirty work. He is influenced by the older guy. As for what Dexter has decided, he wants his son to have the normal childhood he never had, which means the boy will be staying at the Catholic daycare. After all, by the way, one thing I feel couldn't be left out of this video are clips of Dexter speaking without his inner voice. He seems much more autistic.
Valeu.
It was still worth it. Stop laughing. It was you crazy. And get back to work. Well, it doesn't take long for Queen to gather the courage and Day. In marriage, after all. They've been at this for a year now. One thing she finds ridiculous and rejects. The guy, yes, he managed to be rejected by the woman with whom he's had the most relationships throughout the entire series. There is nothing left. I think that puts an end to whatever the two of them were having. Besides that, Debbie received the news that she's going to be promoted again from detective to lieutenant, something she'll first tell Angel, since she kind of wanted his blessing. But a trait of the characters' personalities is that their relationship is like a father and son. As the episodes go on, the religious folks continue their scheming. In the meantime, they've already sent horses full of symbols carrying corpses, organs on scales, a body with snakes inside, etc. These guys are creative and have free time. As for the police's analysis of all this, they believe that each new case is a way for the guys to make some sort of tally for the end of the world, following the passages of the Bible. Maybe this way they'll be able to figure it out. What will the next attack be? Of course, Dexter, being Dexter, wouldn't wait for the police. At night, he does some digging and discovers the identity of the latest villain. His name is Travis Marshall. That was it. Dexter already has everything he needs to confront Travis. He believes this is the only murderer of the apocalypse. He takes the guy hostage in the car, and his plan right away is to eliminate the psycho right there. However, Travis reveals that he has never managed to take a life himself. Everyone so far has lost their life at the hands of the old man known as the Professor. Travis follows him because he believes God speaks directly to the old man. In short, even being an accomplice, it seems that Travis doesn't fit the code. The real target now is the Professor, and Dexter will start to try to approach both of them. To do this, he begins by creating some sort of friendship with Travis, and we find out that a major motivation for this character was to protect his sister from the old man's evil. Even so, the crazy Arua discovered that Travis was straying from the words of God, so to speak, and decided to do away with that sister. Then, hell, that was the motivation Travis needed to open his eyes, and now he is determined to help Dexter. They are going to team up and go after the Professor so he can receive the punishment he deserves. For now, no one knows where the old man has hidden. Well, after spending the whole episode looking, the duo discovers that the Professor might be in that abandoned church. There, in a place they invade, Dexter finds a trap door that leads to the lower floor, and upon entering, bam! He had been dead this whole time. Yes, all this time, the real professor was already dead. All the deaths were actually carried out by Travis himself, including the sisters. The guy is a maniac. As for the professor we saw in all the episodes so far, he was, in reality, just a voice in his head, a hallucination from the villain's schizophrenic mind. More or less like Dexter when he sees his father. This recap was pretty quick because, come on, who cares? This isn't exactly one of the most memorable seasons, but they did an amazing job with the plot twist here. At no point was this teacher seen or talked to anyone besides Travis, while at the same time, he was the villain's dark passenger.
Travis killed all those people.
Well, after discovering this, and before Dexter could act, Travis finds a way to escape the place. Now the maniac is out, there and determined to continue his apocalyptic murders. As for Dexter's new objective, it is to find his whereabouts before it's too late. One of the subplots worth mentioning in the mix is that Debbie is finally having sessions with a psychologist to find out why she sabotages herself so much in relationships. She ends up saying that the only man she trusts is Dexter and that she owes everything to him, even though by now she already knows it's Brian. Moser is the villain of the first season. He was Dex's brother, but who cares? She knew that her father, the cop Harry, slept with a bunch of informants, and one of them was Dexter's mother, but whatever. And that's it. Debbie had someone to take after. In summary, the psychologist plants the idea in Debbie's head that she might feel something more for Dexter because this is a plot worth mentioning. First, out of curiosity, the actors playing Deborah and Dexter were married for 2 years in real life from 2008 to 2010. Second, because those were exactly the years this season was being filmed. It aired in 2011. Third, because likely the writers wanted to pair these characters up in the show just because they were together in real life. And holy shit, what a horrible decision. All the construction of a sibling relationship right there, thrown away with these twisted ideas. The guys really lost their way. At least these two broke up, and consequently, well, the characters also do not end up together. Here's my rant. Back to the main plot, Dexter sets a trap for Travis to meet him, which goes wrong as the protagonist was kind of messed up, and who ends up winning the fight is none other than Travis himself. Consequently, Dexter is tied up and literally left to catch fire at sea. Now Travis thinks he's dead, but what's up with that? You're not in the top 3 villains here, buddy. Of course the man is alive, and we move on to the last episode, after eliminating about 3 or 4 people in his evil schemes. And since Travis thinks Dexter is dead, he goes to his house and discovers the existence of Harrison. He also finds out that the boy is going to make an appearance at daycare later. Being a maniac, his plan is to go get the kid for the final grand act of the apocalypse, the slaughter of the lamb. Of course, in the meantime, Dexter has also composed himself and is now present at his son's presentation.
Sorry.
He's a cute psychopath. Even so, at the end of the presentation, Dexter ends up getting distracted, and right there among the crowd, Trev has already infiltrated and taken Harrison with him. The guy is quick. The next step of the plan was to head up to the tallest building since an eclipse is going to happen. That's where Travis intends to perform the act. However, to the villain's surprise, Dexter shows up. For the weird ritual to work, he needs to be dead. He didn't even question why. At this point, just accept it. Anyway, this time, good triumphed. The eclipse has arrived. Travis already at night. Of course, Dexter wouldn't miss taking Travis to the table and the plastic after everything that guy has done. They're in the same old abandoned church, and there's even a brief debate to see who was right, religiously speaking. This season focuses on that, right? Anyway, the real pearl comes here. Well, a little before the act, and don't even ask me how or why, Debbie just shows up at the church as if nothing had happened and sees this little scene. Her brother all decked out as the Bay Harbor Butcher, plunging the knife into Travis. Yes, the guy was caught with his pants down, and that's the scene that wraps up our 6th season. Our continuation picks up right at that same scene, where Dexter is still trying to play the craziest of all crazies, claiming he doesn't know what he did and freaked out on Travis when he was attacked. A poorly told story that poor dear Debbie, now a lieutenant, remembering, swallows. And moreover, Dexter even convinces her not to call the police. The plan is to set the church on fire, disappear from the scene, and then say that the religious figure took his own life in one last bizarre apocalyptic act. The next day, now with everything turned to ashes, the brothers are called back by the police. An important detail in the midst of all this is that the night before, Dexter had already taken a blood sample from Travis, his famous trophy, and since the deal went down before the fire, it was the caterpillar who found the glass vial. Anyway, Debbie is still a former detective lieutenant. She spent the whole episode investigating, and in the end, there she is in Dexter's apartment with all her equipment, blood trophies, and whatever else she could find. Now there's no way out, Daddy. You're gonna have to come clean. And I'll say it again, Debbie, when she's not thinking about shaking her hips, she's a serial killer.
Things just got interesting.
After this revelation, of course, Debbie is disgusted and runs away like a child avoiding a bath. Dexter says it was their father who taught the code and to do all of this, something that convinces the woman to remain silent. In short, the two convince themselves that Dexter's murders are like a necessity, an addiction, and the only way Deborah found to avoid losing her brother, or worse, was 24-hour surveillance. Debbie is going to act sweet and stick to Dexter wherever he goes. And if you're wondering where Harrison was in all of this, since he hasn't even been mentioned yet, well, the kid is living in the apartment and being looked after by the nanny now. Going back to one of the side plots here, we return to Queen. This time it's not Senor Barriga's skin and he's thinner than I was in 2020, remembering that he's separated from Deb and now ends up falling in love with a stripper. Linked to the case of the main villain of this season. Who is the villain this season? Well, that would be Isaac, a sort of powerful boss, mafia-like pimp, who after all isn't exactly the most memorable guy when thinking about Dexter. In the midst of Deb's pursuits, Dexter finds a way to convince her to help instead of hinder. They have in hand the file of a dangerous bald guy who has never been caught and is ready to kill again in a few days before settling things with him. In one of Dexter's subplots, this is where we meet Hannah, a woman who will subsequently become his new romantic interest after Rita. This guy is entering into almost as many relationships as Deb. It's really genetic, basically. The woman is a suspect in the murder of her ex-husband, and moreover, she's also a kind of poison ivy, always surrounded by almost identical plants and flowers. Back to the bald guy's case, tonight is Deb's night. Have you seen that the police can't prove anything in time, and if they don't do something soon, the guy is gonna kill another innocent? In other words, here she is, invading his house without a warrant or anything like that. Learning, this particular murderer is a guy who brings a woman to his home, dresses in a sinister costume, and starts a chase through a maze full of things that can kill. Anyway, now the guy is on the run and free again. Debbie finally understands that Dexter is a necessary evil, I'm a necessary devil, and indirectly she lets him go back to his apartment and do what he has to do with bad people. Still, she rejects her brother's nature and will probably never be the same again. Well, now that he's free to act, Dexter breaks into the bald guy's trailer and goes to investigate. However, out of nowhere, the crazy guy shows up, the two start fighting, and bam! Dexter is erased and wakes up ready to be yet another victim in the maze.
Corra.
Run. I don't run. I make people
Eu faço as
run.
pessoas correrem.
It's worth mentioning that I could condense this whole chase much more, but personally, it's one of my favorite subplots in the entire series. This Dexter is a guy who hunts down and takes out killers before they can react, but how would he fare in a one-on-one against a Ghostface, a murderous clown, Michael Myers? Well, here we can see a bit of how it would be, but
I can run if there's a bull behind me with an axe.
This cinema is just so badass. Seeing how even when trapped by the enemy, the guy doesn't panic and keeps trying to fight back is the hunter against the hunter. There's no other way. Well, skipping to the end of this mess, Dexter manages to take the guy out with a shovel, and well, the rest you already know how it goes.
No! No!
In fact, along with the bald guy's body, that's how Dexter gets rid of all his blood trophies. Also, this was one of the things that made Debbie reject her brother, and he is burning it in an attempt to reconnect with her, as he is feeling happy, moving a bit forward in the story. Do you remember that La Guerta found a bloodstain? After some analyses, the woman decided to go back to investigating the Bay Rabot butcher, even though for now this stays just between her and Debbie. Back to it. Isaac cornered the main villain. Here's the reason he starts pursuing our protagonist. Basically, the mafia pimp likes boys, but specifically a boy named Victor, who Dexter has already killed. The old man wants revenge. Anyway, Isaac was also being pursued by the police. He ended up falling into one of their traps, and because of that, he was arrested. This is where we return to Queen's relationship with his escort. She is one of the dancers at the nightclub of which Issa is the commander, and if Queen doesn't get rid of the evidence that incriminates him, the mobster, well, the blonde will pay. Speaking of relationships, we also have updates on Hannah and Dexter. This is because, after getting close and investigating the woman, he confirms that it was indeed she who got rid of her ex-husband with a plant that stops the heart. The guy only gets involved with troublesome issues like that, which is great. I have no problem with it. He eliminates Hannah, wraps her in plastic, and takes her to the kill table, even though in the end she was one of the few victims who went to the table but wasn't afraid of Dexter. And as we know, this guy is crazy for someone who will accept him. Anyway, the two are definitely in love now. Well, Debbie is not entering any relationships, and since she has some free time, she also didn't miss the chance to investigate Hannah. It turns out that this woman has messed up more than one guy's life. However, neither Debbie nor the police can prove it. So now that she knows everything her brother does, it's personal. Debbie wants him to get rid of Hannah. It's a huge moral dilemma for our protagonist to decide the outcome with the villain of this season. It ended up happening sooner than usual. The situation is that he and Dexter created a common enemy, and in the end, they help each other to eliminate him. The final agreement was that, with this, the villain would forget what Dexter did and flee the country forever. However, as he was leaving, Isaac was betrayed by one of his top henchmen and took a bullet. There's no turning back. The villain will be dead in a few hours. Knowing this, and having still loved Victor, the old man's last wish was for Dexter to take him to the very place where he discarded the guy's body, thus making them be together forever. Very romantic. This mobster, in the end, Dexter ended up respecting, even though they are enemies. Well, the focus now will be more on Laguerta's pursuit. We continue to move forward in a few more episodes. Laguerta's investigations, with the help of the former commander, led her to discover that the cabin where Dox was killed belonged to Dexter's mother's old killer, meaning it's a huge suspect against him. As for the conclusion with Quinn and his new girlfriend, she is still under threat from a junior pimp, which led Quinn to get rid of him with a bullet, but at least the girl is free, one less subplot for us to worry about. Now that we are nearing the end of the season, Dexter and Hannah are openly in a relationship, especially since no one can prove that she is guilty of the murders she is still committing. So to try for a truce, the blonde calls Debbie to talk, but there is no conversation. Debbie swears to do everything in her power to make sure Hannah rots in prison forever. But a part of Laguerta's elaborate plans was simply to release a guy who had been serving a life sentence, Hector Strada. He was the mastermind behind Dexter's mother's murder. In other words, the plan is to have Dexter take the guy to slaughter and get caught in the act.
I am Dexter Morgan, and I'm going to kill you.
Good luck! Dexter had time to get out of there. He had left all the plastic and the chainsaw behind, a huge piece of evidence that he is the true butcher. What he didn't have was the time to finish it. Hector then took him hostage, and in the end, the two had to flee to different places. Another problem fell on Dexter. Out of nowhere, bam, Debbie had an accident after fainting while driving. An accident that wasn't so out of nowhere since Dexter discovered that it was Hannah herself who put sleeping pills in her water. In other words, his little sister won't be safe if he continues with his new girlfriend. To solve this, and since his feelings prevent him from killing the blonde, the solution Dexter found was to deliver evidence that would lead to Hannah's arrest. A way to protect his sister and get rid of the blonde at the same time.
You should have killed me.
Now, in the last episode, while taking care of his son, look who showed up out of nowhere. Lagertha, along with a bunch of police officers. Basically, they came to arrest Dexter for Hector's death. Even though, as far as we know, the guy remains alive during the interrogation, we have a few more traits of Angel's and Laguerta's personalities. Angel always acted like a third imposter, trying to exonerate Dexter from any accusation. And Laguerta, who started the series more like a strange flash of Dexter, is ending up as one of the people who came closest to incriminating him. It took a while to define this, but these two aren't going to change much from here on out. Well, of course Dexter anticipated all the accusations, so what he did was plant a false clue and Laguerta's fingerprints, which turned the situation against her instead. And regarding his wallet, sorry, you'll have to forgive me, there was a partial print and yours. How did that end up there? Always a step ahead, that guy. It's worth mentioning that these new personality traits have led Angel and Laguerta to become somewhat of adversaries despite all that history they have together. relationship. With all this, LaGuerta kept investigating, so what Dexter did was to capture Hector again and make the guy ask for her help. In other words, the plan is to kill not only Hector, but LaGuerta as well. Dexter is completely fleeing from the code. When he arrives at the place, what LaGuerta finds is just Hector's body, already lifeless. That is, until Dexter emerges from the shadows and takes her out with a syringe. His plan needs to be a bit more elaborate than just making the two disappear. What he wants to do is shoot Hector with LaGuerta's gun and shoot LaGuerta with Hector's gun, making it look like one killed the other. What he didn't expect is that Deborah, as always, would also show up at the scene, and she, of course, does not agree with what Dexter wants to do at this moment. The caterpillar decided to wake up and say that Debbie should shoot her brother. She enters a dilemma between killing or not killing Dexter, and in the end, the choice was to shoot the caterpillar and put an end to all of this once and for all. Even though, of course, Debbie will never be the same again. Goodbye, caterpillar. We will always remember you for whatever. I didn't think that Debbie would kill you. The season ends with the two of them leaving the place and going to the New Year's Eve party where everyone else was. Even though this season doesn't have one of the most memorable villains or isn't one of the best, it was, without a doubt, the season where Dexter had to solve things the most at the same time. Debbie discovering who he is, a mafia villain, a dangerous assassin that he loves. He loves a lot throughout the series, but Rita is unforgettable, of course, the caterpillar who wouldn't stop investigating. And all this while he is going after other villains and is the father of Harrison. This is Dexter, being tested to the limits of everything he can do. As always, we move on to the last season. 6 months have passed since the last events. Dexter has, as usual, carried on with his life normally. As a father and a killer, returned to bowling and even met some new blondes. Jade, well, she didn't handle getting involved in all this very well. She spent these 6 months indulging in substances and is now on her 7th criminal relationship. This time, since the brothers haven't seen each other in months, Dexter finds a way to go to Debbie. The truth is she is acting as an infiltrator. She says she doesn't want to see Dexter anymore, that she has given up everything because of him, and on top of that, she even confesses that she shot the wrong person. Well, Qui was abandoned by the prostitute, so now he's dating Angel's sister. Yes, I hadn't mentioned that he had a sister, but there's a way to keep introducing these characters into the series. A distinguishing feature of this season is that we're going to focus on how Dexter thinks. That's why the character introduced here is Evelyn, a specialist in the workings of the human brain and psychology, specifically in the brain and psychology of psychopaths. We'll get to know more about her in time. The important thing for now is that she is here to help with the investigation of a new villain who is cutting and removing part of the victim's brains. Back to the storyline of the siblings, Dexter has spent this whole episode really bothered by what Debbie said. Because of this, the man is angrier than ever and tries to forcefully take Debbie away to keep her safe. And
fatality.
Finally, where's Debbie's 7th relationship? You were one of the fastest ones anyway, and even being an infiltrator, Debbie tells Dexter to leave for good. What bothers him in this whole situation is that he's no longer in control. Debbie always needed him to sort things out, but now she finally realizes she doesn't need him anymore. Without Debbie, Dex is feeling more lost than ever. The guy doesn't know what to do, and it's at this moment that Evelyn shows up. She hands him an envelope filled with various drawings he made as a child, a bunch of bizarre sketches from a disturbed kid, and in the end, it shows that this doctor knows all of Dexter's history. Very cinematic. The next episode starts with an old tape. There we have a recording of Harry having sessions with this same doctor to talk about Dexter, showing that the boy has been fascinated with real crime scenes since he was a child. In summary, it was her who suggested creating a code. She said Dexter's bloodlust couldn't be stopped, but rather redirected. Overall, she is just another big fan of the protagonist. Admire what Dexter has become. The truth is that Evelyn went to Dexter because this same brain killer is sending her bizarre gifts. She thinks it could be one of his former patients, and because of that, she wants help from the one who goes after criminals, Dexter. In the shoal of Queen Angel and his sister, Angel now wants Queen to be promoted to sergeant. He knows that the two can get serious and wants someone with a future for his sister. However, this story also makes room for Debbie, who continues to go from bad to worse and has decided to ask Queen for help, something that makes Angel's sister jealous as she knows that the two have a past together. You were with her anyway. Just Queen wouldn't solve it. Debbie starts having having sessions with Evelyn herself, even though she still doesn't want to see Dexter, and the two reach the point of also watching the tapes recorded by Harry. Moreover, there's one more thing she couldn't bear. It was on the tapes. She discovers that the reason their father took his own life was because he couldn't cope with what Dexter had become, a motivation that led Deborah to meet with Dexter later, just for her to try to finish the job herself. Fortunately, aside from losing a car, the accident didn't amount to anything. The two siblings go for a new session with Evelyn, and together this time, Dexter remains more irritated than ever and leaves before it finishes. Meanwhile, Evelyn was left alone for a while after the siblings departed and ended up being kidnapped by her crazy ex-patient. The story is that the guy had anger issues because he was beaten up a lot as a child, so the doctor simply ordered an operation to remove part of his brain, as she believed that specific part was what made him aggressive. Anyway, she was wrong, and now the guy wants revenge. To save the woman, the two brothers finally come together, and without telling the police anything, they break into the house, find the doctor, and ultimately, right there. Well, that was the way Dexter and Debbie found to make amends, and on top of that, they got rid of a potential villain right in the middle of the season. It's worth mentioning that this may be the last season, but finally, the man, the legend, has a storyline just for him. I'm not gonna delve too deeply here, but basically, it's about a 20-year-old woman who appeared out of nowhere claiming to be Mazuka's daughter, and now he will investigate her to uncover her true intentions. Well, now that he has some free time, Dexter encounters a peculiar young man, Zach, a boy strangely drawn to blood, just like he is.
It's no coincidence that Zach Hamilton is here. He is attracted to blood.
The question is that after investigating, Dexter discovers that this kid has already made his first victim. He goes to Evelyn for advice, and she suggests that passing on Harry's code could be interesting, something Dexter ignores. He takes the kid to the table, but discovers that in the end, this boy is also just going after bad people. In other words, he's free and may become some sort of apprentice or spiritual son of Dexter, another demonic spirit returned to haunt our brothers. It's her, the poisoner Hannah, the woman who found a way to escape prison and decided to return to the most successful murderer in history. She's asking to be sliced up, jumping a bit from the soap opera drama. Let's go to the updates. Debbie has started hating Dexter again because the guy decided to help Hannah once more. She stopped getting involved. Dexter has a soft spot for blondes, there's no denying it. He was going to send her far away on a plane, but then he realized he still loves her. She went to bed and told her to stay. Pause for the official record. Dexter sleeps with a sock on, but spending too much time with her left Dexter with no time for Zach. The boy, in the end, was found in the apartment with part of his head missing. Yes, the brain killer is still on the loose. The former one was just another enemy of the doctor. They even liked the name Brain Killer. I came up with that myself. Well, what Dexter decided is to take Harrison and Hannah and move to Argentina, as if nothing happened. The initial plan was to come to Brazil, but the Dexter from Recife is already me, so he gave up. As for Debbie, it seems she's going to end up on her 7th boyfriend anyway. The one who decided to break up was Errol's sister, and those two got back together, the most confusing couple in the series. So much doctor, Evelyn just found out that the one responsible for killing Zach and cutting up brains out there was one of her lost sons, Daniel. This time, she wants to act alone and find a way of fixing him, just like he did with Dexter, which of course Dexter won't accept because now it's personal and he's determined to track this guy down before heading to Argentina. In the end, the doctor decided to allow Dexter to take his son along. However, the guy finds out and being already disturbed says, "Hello Dexter, mommy picked the wrong son. Goodbye doctor." It's always great to learn more about Dexter's psychology. Of course, our hero wouldn't let this slide. He knocks Daniel out and locks him in his own brain slaughterhouse and is ready for another dirty job. The thing is, throughout this season, Dexter realized that his feelings of love for Hannah made him want to stop killing. Usually this is my favorite moment, but now I don't even want to be here. Who would have thought that all a serial killer needed to heal was true love? So Disney, and I miss Rita. This is where, without further ado, Dexter simply decides, not killing the guy he decides he's healed, calls Debbie to have Daniel arrested, and instead of stabbing him right away, he just leaves to catch his flight to Argentina. Before leaving, the brothers even have a sweet little conversation, and now they've definitely forgiven each other. What's wrong? Can I get a hug? It's so beautiful. Even Harry, who has always been part of Dexter's schizophrenia, shows up saying he doesn't need to see him anymore. Everything is so happy and moving. A perfect way to wrap things up, right or wrong. Meanwhile, Daniel managed to escape thanks to Debbie, and he even got away. He's exactly the one guilty guy Dexter chose not to kill. Life is tough. Things didn't go very well with Dexter's escape plan either. Flight was canceled due to a hurricane warning, and he's already received the news that his sister has been shot. Debbie is going into surgery, and Dexter, he's going back to the hospital. This last episode is going to be more focused on memories and farewell. Dexter remembers that this was the same hospital where Harrison was born, and how happy Debbie was with the news.
Vai ser tudo diferente agora.
Eu sei.
De qualquer forma,
I know anyway, for now Debbie is still stable, so Dexter takes the opportunity to take his son and Hannah for the new plan, to escape by bus. But of course he can't go with them because Daniel, the Brain Slayer, is still on the loose. I'll see you in Buenos Aires, we'll be waiting for you. After that, he rushes back to the hospital because in the meantime, Daniel hasn't wasted any time and was already planning to finish the job with Debbie right there. And finally, Dexter arrives in time, but there's no time to do anything as his police colleagues showed up and arrested the villain once and for all. Even so, Debbie is no longer safe. She had a sudden deterioration due to the bullet, which caused respiratory failure. In other words, she is in a vegetative state and will never shake it like she used to. Of course, knowing this made our protagonist feel even guiltier for not having finished off the villain when he had the chance. So he goes to the police station where Daniel was and stabs him right there. How the hell is Dexter gonna get out of a situation in the middle of a police station and with cameras? Of course, using the good old staging, he tried to kill me. The guy doesn't even tremble anymore, it's natural. It doesn't take long for Dexter to be acquitted and leave there. And since, in this episode, he didn't rest for even a minute, there he is in the hospital again. He says he regrets everything, but the final decision is that he can't leave Debbie in that state, especially since the hurricane is almost reaching the city. So Dexter puts his sister on the boat and drifts aimlessly at sea. Or rather, heading straight into the eye of the hurricane. Debbie was always the one who kept the light on for Dexter, and now, because of his choices, she who is gone cannot be forgiven. Goodbye, Debbie. Perhaps you will return in your brother's schizophrenia? After that, it will be his turn. Dexter also feels that he ends up destroying everyone he loves, just like Rita and Debbie, and he doesn't want that to affect his son as well. Hannah was a great woman.
Era grande homem.
Goodbye, Dexter. We will always remember him, especially since no body has been found. Nowadays, 3 more seasons have already been under his name, with new series out there. 50,000 likes, nothing less to bring those seasons here. The final show Harrison in their new home, mother, son, and depict Dexter having a life setting. Finally, we've had a long journey to get here, but this is how we say goodbye to all 8 seasons. Well, on IMDb, the series reached an incredibly high rating, especially for so many seasons, almost a 9. Besides all its years on air, this has been a huge success. For me, without a doubt, this is a very complete series. It makes you able to identify with the character, even with all that dark side behind him, not knowing how to react in certain situations, seeming strange or too quiet, and all those intrusive thoughts. Anyway, whether you're a serial killer or not, you've definitely been through this too. Besides that, the episodes managed to keep you hooked, even in the 3rd season, which was one of the weakest, with Miguel the suck-up. Still, like all great series, they maintain all the melodrama and side missions, which I've spared here to save time. Considering all of this, with me, Dexter, overall, and even knowing that some seasons far surpass others, I would give it a rating somewhere between 7.5 and 8. Well, this is the moment when I ask you to leave a like, a comment, any comment, follow me on Instagram, that's where I announce what I'm doing, and so on. Thank you very much for following the Butcher of Recife up to this point, and until next time.